From how the world changed to now how you can maybe burn the world in all new sorts of ways. Welcome back to Destiny 2 Season of the Wish, and now is when I go over all of the gear, exotics, and the variety of new ways to eradicate the enemies of the light and dark with ease. Now, starting off with the exotics, of course, one of the obvious ones that you probably have seen is the new Season Pass exotic, which is Dragon's Breath, which by definition is quite nifty. So right off the bat, we have the composite propellant, which basically rockets embed themselves in struck targets and periodically eject incendiary fuel that inflicts scorch. The longer this weapon goes without firing, the more fuel the rocket contains. Basically, think Parasite, but in reverse, where the longer you don't use it, the more you get in return, as opposed to Parasite, which is the more you use other guns, the better you get. In addition, it also has high octane, igniting nearby targets partially replenishes fuel. The weapon refills itself from reserves upon gaining maximum fuel, so it's a good way to get access to it. Plus, the exotic catalyst is supposedly something that actually spices up the autoloader a little bit more, or allows you to gain additional fuel, which of course increases the autoloader even more, which I already have good impressions of this right off the bat. Then, in terms of other exotic weaponry, we saw one thing in the trailer, which was a strand suspend kind of bow, which obviously would be kinetic or heavy, but that would be a bold move. Regardless, there is a strand exotic bow that we saw in the trailers that we don't see right off the bat, so this is either actually from the dungeon or from a quest further down the line that Bungie is holding close to the chest. And on that same note, in terms of exotic armor, unfortunately, Bungie does have a handy, or not exactly handy, but they do have a given track record that on the 4th season of a year, we don't get new exotic armor. I'm not sure what gets Bungie to do it, but basically at the same time, we've gotten a consistent pair of exotic armor across all 3 characters across the seasons. We don't have anything new now. So in terms of build setups, pretty much we just have the exotic weapons to play with to see about new build sets. On that same note then, time to get into the broad majority of weapons. Now, I'm going to mark all these as seen just to keep it a little bit simple, but I'm going to go through the main stuff of what's available. You probably won't see any of the dungeon stuff on here, obviously. We'll get back to that at a later date, though. So, apologies for the weird cut there. I had to double check myself on a few things. Now, getting right into the obvious thing here, Breakneck has returned. Now, I imagine this enters the ritual rotation for Gambit, and I already checked as well. It has Subsistence, and it has its original perk, Onslaught, which is basically the more kills you get, the more rate of fire you get. Now, it'll probably be a little bit toned down. It's hard to say if it'll be anywhere near as powerful as it was before. Typically, anytime they reintroduce a Pinnacle weapon and its Pinnacle perk at the same time, they're usually a toned down version of what it was before. So, try not to expect too much from this one. And then at the same front, we have Lethal Abundance, which is a strand high-impact frame auto rifle new to Iron Banner, which I'm not going to lie, this is looking more banana-ish with just that shader. And it's got some interesting set of perks from what I've seen, but at the same time, it's, again, a high-impact frame auto rifle, which I think the only place they can live is in Crucible, but even still, if it's in Crucible, they're using every other frame instead. So, hard to say if that has any fight. And we also have Ross Arago 4, which is a new Cassoid adaptive frame auto rifle. Basically just going to be in the Whirlpool, probably spawning from Banshee every now and again, but something to look out for in case you want a new Void build to add some range to it. And from there, that's all of the auto rifles. Moving into scout rifles, let's see. We have the return of the Imperative, which this was something that caught me by the wayside. Essentially, everything that is the bushy, let's just say straight up, the bush-covered weapons from Season of the Undying, all of those have returned, so 4 in total. But I'll get to them later. And they come with a new origin perk, which is nano munitions. Basically, being near allies slowly builds up a partial emergency ammo refill for the next time this weapon runs out of ammo. Emergency ammo amount increases with time spent near allies. Think Restoration Ritual, but more based on friends instead of dealing damage. Then, at the same time, this is a kinetic high-impact scout rifle. High impacts I am personally a fan of, but at the same time, they definitely there is some strife to using it well in the sandbox. Then for other scout rifles, that's actually it. That was the only new scout rifle introduced this season. Moving on to pulse rifles, we have the new comp reward, which is a 4-round burst aggressive frame Hake pulse rifle, which is also strand, and it has, interesting enough, this seems like a glitch, but it seems to have 2 origin perks or 1 too many perks. So yeah, I believe it would be typically Hake as well as the Crucible thing, but we also have possibly a additional stock buff instead. But not gonna lie, it's looking pretty nifty into where it should be. Pretty good stats across the board and the like, but you know, I'm probably not gonna be playing any comps, so probably not gonna see this much myself. And then moving on, we also have the Adhorative, which is continuing from the other season of the Undying Weapon. Again, the rebrand from way long ago, and one that was initially ignored, but possibly rebranded. So holding out hopes that that is worth something. Moving into hand cannons. Okay, so we have, again, another Season of the Undying Return of the Optative. Now, this is another vertical frame hand cannon, which we just got the taste of one with Word of Crota. This is also void, but at the same time, main difference is the origin trait and the array of perks that may be available. Plus, this is a little easier to find just in case you haven't had a chance to run Crota or don't have 6 people to run it with. But then, once again, that is all of the weapons we have for hand cannons. Moving into submachine guns. Another one from Season of the Undying. I think we've covered all 4 at this point. We have the submachine gun, which is a lightweight frame, which I'm holding out hopes this also can drop with Phase Magazine. I'll have to double check around the wayside, but it's a way to lower the rate of fire and boost its range in summary. And then we also have the Parabellum, which is another of the field-tested ones. It is adaptive solar SMG. This is a part of the gunsmith stuff, so this isn't exactly Foundry in any way, aside from the field-tested stuff. Here's hoping it's something worth it, just to have another adaptive frame SMG that's actually worth it. Moving into sidearms. New sidearms for this season. There is none. And then moving to bows, I know there's at least one, and that is Lethophobia, which I don't know what that is. Maybe it's a fear of the dark, just judging by that statement, or fear of stars. But it's another lightweight frame bow, which is a carbon copy model-wise of the old Season of the Chosen stuff, but it comes with a new origin perk, Dragon's Vengeance, where when an ally dies, or you personally reach critical health, this weapon's magazine refills, and it gains bonus range, charge rate, and handling. I'm not sure how well that works with a bow, aside from the bonus stats. It's hard to say how this will automatically reload, considering that technically the reload is just, you know what I mean. It's a bow. How do you reload it aside from an arrow appearing in the shaft? Now, on that same note, moving into the green ammo varieties. So we have shotguns. If you didn't know, the Reese Walker has been rebranded and reforged. So it is a new version, and judging from that, it already has some good perks right off the bat. So hopefully this is still what it once was. And another new one, this is the Super Cluster, rebranded from the Europa shotgun. It's basically a Snother Slug shotgun, this one being strand though, so I think it's the first of its kind in that respect. But of course, new seasonal and everything, Dragon's Vengeance, and some new perks to hopefully actually have an impact on the sandbox. Then, in terms of the rest of the shotguns, Retro Futurist has once again returned, which I could have sworn was in something else, but I think this is just returning to the Crucible playlist, judging from that. So I believe this will be dropping from just random Crucible playlists. Don't quote me on that, though. And that is all for shotguns. Moving into lightweight frame grenade launchers, there is one that is currently making possible waves. I'll have to double check on its perks later date. Undercurrent, which comes with an adept form because it is, of course, the Nightfall one. Possibly uprooting Forbearance in its perk rolls. Now, keep in mind, I haven't seen exactly all the perks it have. This is only a possibly, but it is a new arc wave frame grenade launcher. If it has better perks or newer perks, it possibly will undo Forbearance, but it's hard to say. It has a really hard fight to undo that king. Then into fusion rifles. Loaded question. We have at least one in the form of another first of its kind, a rapid fire strand fusion rifle, which this is a rebrand of the old Null Composure ritual weapon, but at the same time strand, so I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt, and it has a new perk which is Slice. Casting your class ability allows this weapon to sever targets on hit, a new strand perk, which I missed on the last strand one that came up, but at the same time sounds fairly nifty. If you wanted to build into severing things, this is pretty much the go-to. Imagine Titans will like that well. Then into sniper rifles, I wouldn't be surprised if there was... there is basically just the return of Eye of Soul, which of course is Trials, coming back from way back when, is adapted to also be Cassoid, which is kind of underwhelming, but regardless, it still is the adept version, which of course exists. So if you want to get a new sniper from Trials, there is that. Then a few things with everything else. We have two new trace rifles. The first being one from Trials, which is a strand trace rifle. Of course, that is first of its kind aside from Navigator, which it may be nifty. It definitely looks flary, and of course also has an adept version in case you're fully into that, but at the same time, I am not holding out any hope for this being anything worth it. Same thing, or not exactly the same thing goes for Appetence, which is a new strand, that's the wrong word, stasis trace rifle, which it is, I think, the first of its kind, actually, because, let's see, Solar, Void, Arc, yep. All of these are first of their kinds for the Darkness subclasses, and this is the first stasis trace rifle we had since Agriceptor, before anyone says that. And hopefully something worthwhile. I am kind of looking forward to making that into stasis build. Then no new glaives, because we had plenty of glaives in the last couple of seasons. And no new... Interesting. I think we may be getting a new special ammo sidearm soon. But moving on to heavy weapons, for swords, we have the new ritual weapon sword, which is the Chivalric Fire, which is a new Void caster frame, the first of its kind as well. This is the only Void one that can actually have a thrown projectile. Nifty looking thing, as well as access to some very Void perks, as well as the variations of solid enough perks, but hard to say this will be anything worth it considering that most legendary swords have already found their homes, and I'm not sure if caster swords have a home yet. Then we also have the double-edged answer, which an underwhelming one. I think this is a returned weapon or a new one. It's hard to say. It looks thinner than the original swords, but this is the new ritual weapon for strikes. Basically, if you run strikes, you'll find this sword. It is a basic uppercut sword, so not much to write home about, but I'll not be the judge of it just because I am not the fan of most swords that aren't special. Then from that point, we have no new heavy grenade launchers this season. As well, for rocket launchers, nothing new except for Crux Termination 4, which is... What was that big old description? Never mind, ignore that. But this seems to be another World Drop exotic, and it is Cassoid, so many booms. And just looking at that roll right off the bat, in addition to being aggressive frame, this might be something that can kind of stir up the meta. Clown Cartridge, Explosive Light, and Wild Card for kill, booms, and everything, plus aggressive frame rocket launchers are just generally the best. Looking forward to that. Then into linear fusion rifles. So there's one that came out that's Dune's Petitioner, which is another aggressive frame burst linear fusion rifle, this time in the Void variety. I believe we have Stasis, Void, and Arc of the Rainbow for aggressive frames. And just looking at things like Reconstruction, I already have high hopes for this being a solid one in terms of just general damage. Plus, even though it is reusing Threaded Needle's model, it's looking quite sleek. And I kind of would like a reason to use a linear fusion other than it being the option because crit spot. And then for legendary machine guns, we only have one that came out this season, and that is Mercado 45, which is another Foundry one, which is a Suros machine gun adaptive frame strand, which is not the first of its kind for strand machine guns, but at the same time, it is looking like it has some nifty perks already. Although, of course, Suros being more of a Crucible-focused thing, I just wish I could have an alternate option. On that note, that's looking like everything that we can get right off the bat of the new season. Now, like I said, I am having harebrained schemes because of this, is that we're going to be getting a new special ammo sidearm, but that is crackpot theories. I'll probably make a separate video on that in the future. Pardon the awkward cut, but I forgot to cover a few things. So, as we know, obviously, in terms of an exotic catalyst, we just got the new Thorn Catalyst, which will drop from random ritual playlists. And we'll also be seeing, of course, the Dragon's Breath Catalyst from the ritual locations. But then we also have new patterns. So, of the new patterns, basically everything from this season, in addition to the rebranded of Season of the Undying stuff, that is everything that is currently craftable. And I did miss something in the form of a pulse rifle. Here we are. We have the Scholar Potential, which is something that I did miss. So before hopefully you watch to the end so you don't have to make the post. But regardless of that, I'll probably make a comment in the videos, but I digress. The patterns currently available is essentially everything from the seasonal vendor right now. Undying or brand new, regardless, it is all craftable. So if you actually want to get some better rolls on these varieties, be sure to visit the crafting thing and get all your resonant versions. With that, I will see you in the next video.